Hey guys, today I'm here with Samantha Berkowitz, registered dietitian, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects that I actually don't get to talk about very often on the podcast. This is only maybe the second episode I've done on the topic of food and how terrible diet culture is, and how we should just really, the best thing I think we could do, should do, when we're trying to figure out our diet habits. I don't even like the word diet because
hmm
they've tainted it so badly, and it's come to mean things that you do for a little bit of time, and it's
hmm
structured, and it's limiting, and it's stressful, which is counterproductive to the weight loss that most people are trying to do. But I don't think we should focus on weight loss. I think we should just be healthy, and that looks different for every person. But mindfulness is what I feel like we should do. Mindful, intuitive eating, step by step, eat one thing and then check in with your body and see how it feels and how it likes it. Does it not? Because it, stemming off of that, the internet's a great thing. We have so much access to information these days, but it'll also drown you in the things they say are bad for you. And it'll leave you feeling like you're not allowed to eat anything. And I don't want any of us to subscribe to that. I want us to like check in with our bodies and like, is this something that you do okay with?
hmm Absolutely. I think, yeah, social media and like you said, the internet has become a place where anyone can share their opinion, right? And there is a place for that, and that's important. And it also allows people that kind of, put out their opinion as fact when that's just not the case, and saying that, oh, XYZ food isn't good for you. Here's why it's bad for you. And honestly, like without going into every single food that is on this planet, just kind of saying like the stress and overwhelm you feel about picking the quote unquote right food is more harmful to your body and that stress than any food ever could be. Um, and I think just the amount of brain space that a lot of us allow food and our body to take up is overwhelming and is limiting us from doing other things. I definitely have experience with that, kind of a little bit about me. So I became a dietitian mostly unknowing to myself, but I wanted to, figure out the quote unquote right way to eat, the perfect way to eat, how to be the healthiest. And unfortunately, that's a very common story for a lot of dietitians saying, well, I don't now, but I started this journey having a disordered relationship with food and kind of thinking I was going to find that right way and that healthiest way. And even as a nutrition major, like in college, I thought I was kind of, I guess I didn't really know what diet culture was, but I kind of, yeah, went in thinking that I was going to be an expert in nutrition and learn that magic. And what I didn't know was learning about BMI and how to teach people how to lose weight, quote unquote, really got into my head as a young adult. And I started creating my own calorie ranges for myself while working out more than I ever had before, and slowly started using things like my fitness pal to track every morsel of food that went in my mouth, buying a food scale, measuring the serving size of chips and, right down to the gram, and being super rigid with that. Um, and honestly, looking back, it was that rigid mindset felt really safe. And that's what a lot of people find dieting to be, like, oh, well, I don't have any control of my eating. So if I follow these rules, then I'm going to like, that will keep me in bounds, right? But really, what we find is that those strict, rigid rules, which tend to get more rigid over time, actually have that opposite effect. It actually makes us kind of want to like swing the other way and be like, screw this. Like, I'm just going to do whatever I want because we don't like to follow rules. Like, have you ever told a kid not to touch like the breakable thing in the store? Like, what do they want to do? Right. So it's kind of the same thing with us as adults with food. Like, we don't our brain and psychology at the baseline is still that young child. Like when you're like, no chips, no carbs, your body's like, well,
That's
I don't
exactly what I
really
want
care.
then.
Right. I don't really care what you have to say. Like, that's what I want now. And now we're gonna like that desire for that because it's forbidden is gonna be like on 100.
Yeah, we like freedom just as creatures,
Hmm.
like as people. And
Yeah.
also following the rules. You know, I mentioned that I like mindful intuitive eating, but
Hmm.
in the safety constructs of a rigid diet, you know, touching on that and how people feel safe in
Hmm.
that, the mindful intuitive eating puts all the responsibility on you. And that
Yes.
is something that people are also terrified of. We want freedom. We want freedom to choose and do what we want and don't tell me how to be and what to do. But also, can you please tell me what to do and how to
What
be?
to do. Exactly. That's, I actually just got off a call with a client and she was saying that, she's experiencing what I like to call is the messy middle. So kind of when you're like, okay, I'm done dieting, right? I don't want to follow these rules, but I also don't know what it means to like, what does intuitive eating mean? How do I listen to my body? Like, so you kind of throw all the rules out the window and you are eating whatever, how much you want, right? And but without being kind of in tune with your body. And that's kind of how we learn. And I think a lot of people have to go through that messy middle once they've been dieting for a long time to kind of be like, okay, well, what does feel good for my body and what doesn't, right? And that tends to be similar to people that have maybe binge ate for a while. Like on cookies, you're going to buy those cookies, you're going to keep them in the house, and you're going to eat a lot of cookies. Eventually your body's going to be like, okay, enough with the cookies. I want a salad or I want something else. And that's how we learn how to get in tune is kind of by trying and I don't like to say failing, but learning from
Mm.
our body to like, okay, that many cookies was too many cookies for me, right? And where our boundaries are around that. And that can be really scary for people because, that means giving into that, like potentially overeating for a while until we can really tune back in with ourselves. Um, but yeah, it's definitely that middle area is where a lot of people sit for a while, but I think it's necessary to kind of relearn those hunger fullness cues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, just learning our body cues in general,
Totally.
because most
Mhm.
most of us don't. We know
Yeah.
we weren't raised to know that we're supposed to listen to our bodies. What do you mean,
Right?
listen to our bodies? It's not making any noises. What do you mean? And
Right.
so we'll eat the cookies and we'll eat the cookies and we'll eat the cookies and then we'll start feeling so bad, and it doesn't even cross our minds that it might be the cookies.
Yeah, and I think like, and that's something to say, like, I think all foods can fit, but right, the variety in our diet is important too. So the cookies have a place, and so does the salad, and so does the vegetables, and so does the pizza, right? But just like eating one of anything, even if it was apples, right? Like you're not going to feel very good if all you eat is apples. So I think, yeah, the focusing on the variety is super important over like, and like what, like you said, makes your body feel good or doesn't feel good
Mm.
versus trying to follow these rigid rules. Just say like, I'm never gonna, for some reason, like the internet hates oatmeal right now. Um, and saying like, I'm never eating oatmeal again. Like it's bad for you. I mean, I just think, yeah, it puts a lot of stress on us that we don't need. And kind of like you mentioned, like we were never taught that. Like I think a lot of us were raised a clean plate club,
Mm.
eating past fullness. And, maybe it came from a good place, like whether that was because, your family experienced food insecurity and, you had to make all that food function for you, or just because that's how they were raised and they want to make sure you're getting enough. Just because it comes from a good place doesn't mean overriding our hunger cues doesn't have an effect later. And since we never, like you said, we're taught to what does hunger feel like besides a grumbling stomach? That is like the thing I work on clients with the most because they're like, okay, if my stomach's not grumbling, how do I know I'm hungry? Because some people that just isn't something that really happens. And it's more like a headache or feeling extreme fatigue or tiredness. That is that hunger cue for them. But, that's, I feel like in society, that's where it's like, well, grab your coffee, you're tired, right? Like, don't eat food. That would That wouldn't make sense. But yeah, just kind of really going back to the basics and learning like what our body needs and what are those signals. Because sometimes we're like, okay, I know it makes me feel good, but like when am I even hungry? Like I don't even know what that means.
There's so many points that I could touch on that, and I would probably talk the rest of the episode if I
Yeah.
but so for one, you're exactly correct with the hunger cue problems. I experienced that and fall
Mhm.
into the and also, gosh, there's so many tangents I could go on right now. Let me focus.
Literally.
Um, so I I've struggled with food my whole life.
Mhm.
I have neurodivergent
Mhm.
struggles, which lead me to be I'm not a picky eater, but I do
Mhm.
hyperfixate on
Right.
things. And then I'll eat
Mhm.
the same thing because also I'm hypoglycemic, so I have to eat regularly, but also I'm allergic to soy, so there's only a
Okay.
limited amount of things that I can eat.
Yeah.
And then my body doesn't like dairy. And so sometimes like it's weird, but so I'll find something that I can eat finally. Oh,
Mhm.
and then you got the whole everything's bad for you.
Right.
So I
Right.
hyperfixated on that for a really long time. And I have again, is 100 tangents if you can keep up. But I was the chubby kid growing up,
Mhm.
and it's funny because we think we know what healthy eating is, but we don't
Mhm.
actually know what healthy eating is until we
Yeah.
start practicing it. So
Yep.
back in the 90s, healthy eating was like all we knew was eat a salad. So,
Mhm.
in an effort to counteract my chubbiness, there was this whole period of time where I was only allowed to eat salads, but it was fried chicken salads drenched in ranch and cheese and all of the so like it wasn't making a bit of difference, right? And so I stopped eating because I was tired of salads and I was like, well, this
Yeah.
isn't working anyway, so I'm just gonna stop eating. So I just stopped eating and then I got the weight goals that everybody was wanting. But I think that had a hand in messing up my hunger cues
Mhm.
because I suppressed the hunger cues for so long.
Yep.
And so now I don't always catch them because I don't always feel
Mhm.
hungry. Like you said, I'll just feel sick. I'll just feel
Mhm.
sick or bad or tired or something like that. And then you know, the hardest thing about doing anything is remembering to do it. And so instead of remembering that I might need to eat something, I'll be like, man, I'm gonna go lay down and take a nap and see if that helps. And
Mhm.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
like 3 or 4 hours will go by of me. I'm like, well, let me take a bath. Let me see if a shower will help. And it doesn't. And then, it'll be time for dinner and I'll eat something and like 3 bites in, I'm like, oh, suddenly I feel completely better. But, again, you got to talk to your body a little bit better
Yeah.
than what even the best of us do sometimes. And
Yeah.
it's hard to just remember to. But also, on the variety, a hyperfixation on the meals that I do will
Mhm.
cause me to, and I didn't know this was a thing until recently
Mhm.
and I say recently, I've started figuring it out over the past like 3 years or so. I would eat the
Mhm.
same thing every single day, and then one day I would eat it and my body would just completely rebel and
Mm.
absolutely not. And then I won't be able to eat it again for like oatmeal. I ate oatmeal every single day for probably 3 years. And now I cannot eat oatmeal anymore. And it's not a preference thing. It's not a texture, bodily mind
Mhm.
thing. If I eat oatmeal, my heart starts racing. So
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned like being neurodivergent and having some trouble with your hunger and fullness cues because that's actually really common.
yeah.
And why intuitive eating, like the traditional framework, is super difficult for people that are neurodivergent. I have ADHD and like, even though this is literally my job, even in instances, like you said, when you fixate on a task and like I'm just like all in, I'll forget to eat. And that's when I feel that really tired. I'm like, why can't I like keep my eyes open? Like, what is happening? I don't understand. And it's like, oh, well, like lunch would have been good. Yeah, I probably should go do that. Um, but it takes me a while, even though I kind of have identified what my personal hunger cues are and like what that looks like for me. And even still, like, I have instances where it's very difficult for me to do that or like you said, remember and be like, "Oh, yeah, like, it's been a while since I ate breakfast," even though it feels like no time has passed because I have, like, time blindness. But yeah, like, it really does affect us, but we're not really taught that. It's kinda like, "Oh, this is when you eat breakfast. This is when you eat lunch. This is when you eat dinner. Maybe have a snack, maybe don't." And it's really difficult, to kind of really understand your own body, especially when not everyone's hunger cues are the same or as strong, and like you mentioned, like, when we suppress them because we're dieting or something that's actually also really common for people that are neurodivergent is eating slash cooking feeling like a task
Yes.
and not eating because they put off doing it and not necessarily in a diet culture way but just in a task like way. And so we're inadvertently suppressing those hunger cues by putting off eating, and that also suppresses them and makes it even more difficult to listen to them because when our body is like, well, you're ignoring me. So I'm just not going to send you these signals because it's like I'm speaking and you're not listening. Right. And that's really hard to reverse, but we can. It just takes very intentional, like you said, understanding, okay, what does this look like for me? If it's not like a grumbling belly, that's like the only thing we've ever been taught about hunger.
Literally. Yeah, the neurodivergent task thing I was gonna
Mm.
bring up before like you beat me to it. Um, Making a sandwich for neurodivergent people feels like 25 steps.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a neuro like my husband would be like, just make a sandwich. What is the big deal? Just go make a sandwich. Like, you don't understand. I have to, for one, quit doing the task that I'm already focused on. And then I have to go into the kitchen and then I have to get all of the ingredients out. And then I have to toast the bread. And then I have to slather the mayonnaise on. Like, this is too much. Okay. It's too much. I have other things I need to be tending to.
And hope I don't get distracted in the middle of that whole process.
Yeah. So, you crap. It fluttered away as soon as I thought about it. Um, oh. So most of us end up going in there and just grabbing a piece of cheese or a pack of crackers because
Mhm.
it's easier. So I've
Mhm.
had to put a lot of emphasis on food prep.
Mhm.
And even that felt like it, man, it's been such a long learning curve because
Mhm.
again, it's not just cooking. I don't know. Maybe that's a neurodivergent thing too, is that cooking seems so simple to most people. And you just go in there and cook it. I burn everything. I have literally studied, like read books on YouTube, Googled all of the Pinterest things, followed recipe thing, like point by point, tried to learn
Mhm.
how to make food and still struggle with it very, very badly. And can't tell you what I'm doing wrong. I don't know. I'll follow the recipe step by step and still mess it up somehow. But something that has helped me is finding really simple things to food prep, like
Mhm.
fruits and vegetables. You can take like a whole pack of strawberries or a whole pound of carrots and stand there for 10 or 15 minutes and
Mhm.
cut them all up and slice them however you like them and put them in
Mhm.
little single serve containers.
Yep.
And then there's your grab and go. You just reach in there,
Mhm.
which also leads us to the trap of only eating carrots or only,
Right.
we're working on it. Yesterday, what I did was I cooked up uh, in my Instant Pot, it only takes a minute to cook up a thing of quinoa, and
Mhm.
quinoa heats up really, really well. It's just as good heated up later as it is fresh. And then
Mhm.
I chopped up some sweet potatoes and I roasted them in the oven for 20 minutes and then made little mason jar cups of single serve
Mhm.
breakfast. Well, this was my lunch, I guess, because I ate breakfast earlier. But quinoa and sweet potatoes with a scoop of sunflower butter
Okay.
and three ingredients. Ta-da.
Yep.
Super simple.
Yeah. I love leaning on convenience foods, and it's a similar recommendation I make, honestly, to a lot of my clients, but also ones that are neurodivergent as well. Um, and I am someone that loves Trader Joe's, and that's because they have so many freezer slash like mostly prepared options that I can kind of rotate through slash keep on hand that are, like you said, like low number of steps.
Hmm.
Um, but still kind of have that variety, like some veggies, some chicken or a protein, and taste good and are a reasonable price. The other thing I really like is I found a Instagram account. I think it's 5 items or less, Trader Joe's or Trader Joe's 5 items or less. And it's all these recipes with only 5 items. And so you could probably take a lot of them and use like if you shopped at a regular grocery store and not Trader Joe's things. But it is like kind of like you said, it makes it less of a task. And I think cooking's so hard for people that are neurodivergent because like you made the example with the sandwich was like it is a lot of steps. So it's like getting to do that already and then also getting distracted while doing that. Like if I'm making something, even though I like to cook, I'll like stand over it while it boils or simmers or whatever for 10 minutes. And my partner will be like, "Okay, well you can like clean up and like do other things while you do." And
No,
I'm like,
it
"No,
will
I
do.
can't."
We'll forget.
Yeah, or like he used to make fun of me because for like boiling like regular box pasta or making mac and cheese, I put the timer on
Hmm.
the microwave. And he's like, "You don't need to put a timer on, you just taste it when it like until it's done." I go, "Yes, but I want to try and clean up or do something else while it's boiling for 10 minutes. And if I don't, it's going to be 20 minutes and the
Hmm.
pasta's still going to be boiling."
Up to the
So
bottom.
I realized, yeah, exactly. So it's like some of that I've realized is like it's that multitasking barrier, which is a lot of cooking recipes that are maybe not super complex, but are like, okay, while this does this, do this. And for us, that's really difficult. Like I can't, So I think finding recipes that are less steps, less ingredients, maybe like one pot or something that is like, okay, I'll put all this effort in now, but I'll have leftovers that reheats well for lunch or the next day is something that's so important to kind of figure out if that's what works for you or those kind of things. It's like, okay, what makes this task easier for me that I can feed myself, get that variety in, and because I don't know about you, but like I can't meal prep in the sense of like eat the same thing for the next 3 or 4 days. Like I'm like, okay, like I like that and I'll do leftovers. But I can't be eating the same thing for lunch and dinner and like we need like a little bit. So yeah, those frozen things like I think are really great and they get a bad rep, but really like
Mhm.
there are a lot of frozen options that there isn't really like all this added stuff in it. Like it's really just that thing frozen and like you just heat it up and it's the same like as if you made it and froze it at home, you know?
Yes, I love frozen meals. The convenience items, I'm all about that too because, cooking is hard and I don't mean hard just as like complicated, but hard to make
Yeah.
yourself get in it. I could not make it a priority for so long because
Mhm.
eating 3 times a day is obnoxious. Like once a day, maybe okay. I could probably, but 3 times a day, are you kidding me? I have stuff to do, and I have two small children, so I mean,
Yeah.
it's too much. It's too much.
A- Absolutely. I think convenience foods also get a bad rep, but like it doesn't have to mean just eating Cheez-Its and chips all day. Like those have a place, but
Mhm.
right, that's not a meal. And so I think like also being able to take like certain convenience foods to make a recipe easier. So like I'm trying to think. I think something I'm making this week is like kind of like a burrito bowl-esque recipe. And I wanted like a meat on there, a protein, but something that's, not just like cut up chicken, but I'm not like really wanting to put the effort of like braising meat or like, like this long process. And so I got like the Trader Joe's, it's frozen. I think it's the beef burrito, but it's basically like shredded beef with like a sauce. And so now I can make this, but then have like a different protein for on top that's like easy and will heat up in 10 minutes, like in the pot while I do the rice. Like sometimes it's just like adding those things in to have some variety, but also just to make it a little quicker and not like a whole, like you said, a whole day ordeal, whether you're feeding just yourself or especially when we're feeding others, children, like I don't have time to spend all day cooking one meal, like especially not every day. Like I like to do that when I'm like, okay, this is going to be my hobby for the day, right? But like not every day. And I think that took a long time for me, like even though I went to culinary school and I love to cook, that like cooking a 10-page recipe every night is not sustainable and I can't do it. Whether that's because like my produce dies in the produce drawer, because I'm been too ambitious and bought too many things, or just because like I'm working and I'm tired after work and I want to eat something that tastes good, but not, I don't want it to take 3 hours because I already worked for 8 hours, right? Like we need some balance there.
Mhm. Yeah, it was never supposed to be a one-person job. We used to live in villages to where the meals were
Yeah.
a collective effort that everyone
Hmm.
shared. And now, so every single one of us have the pressure of taking a job that was always 5+ people, and now it's
Right.
just you. And if you have
Hmm.
children that you're trying to like juggle and you're ADHD and you're, having a rough day
Hmm.
and it's just you end up crying over your food the whole time. Have you heard of
Yeah.
ADHD organizing the fridge?
No, but okay, well, no, not that term, but I did see something recently. It was like put the condiments in the produce drawer because if you need mustard, you'll go get mustard, but like put the things that are perishable like in front of you.
Yes. So that's what I do,
Okay.
and it's helped a ton. So we put all of our the condiments and the sauces and the stuff that you know that you have, but you're willing to go look for
Right.
in the back and in the drawers in the hard to see places, and you put everything that's perishable and things that need to be eaten up front and in the doors, which is a little controversial for some people with some things because the doors are the least regulated, so the perishable thing.
Right.
But I mean, eat it faster, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
More of a priority.
Yeah, that's my thing about leftovers. I love leftovers. I have no problem with leftovers. The problem is I forget about it. Or it's because
Yes.
even though I use like the glass containers that you can see in,
Hmm.
it gets pushed back. And then
Hmm.
it's like, oh, I have nothing to eat. Like, and it's like, no, you actually have many meals that are now not good, but like you did.
Yeah, it's hard. But it's a learning
It's
curve,
hard.
and it's made harder because there's so much information out there
Hmm.
about it all, and that's why I tell people like the honestly the best thing that you can do is to stop trying to find all of the information and just start to
Hmm.
implement something. And
Yeah.
where I tell people to start is just try to get more fruits and vegetables in what you're already eating. And
Hmm.
so you can totally take the, mac and cheese and then just
Yes.
make saute some broccoli up or something, add to it. Or here's one, frozen pizza. You can totally add onions and peppers and mushrooms to a just regular frozen pizza. That was
Hmm.
life changing for me. So it doesn't matter if you have to drench the carrots in ranch if in the beginning, as long as you're
Mhm.
getting in the carrots. It doesn't matter that you have to dip your strawberries in Nutella to be able to eat them.
Mhm.
Good job on getting in the strawberries. You
Yeah.
got to focus on what you're doing well and trying to maximize the nutrition that you are getting into your body
Mhm.
first. And the more, it's like a crowding out. The more you get in the good stuff, your body will start going, oh, I feel a lot better when I get that stuff over when I get that stuff. And you'll start leaning more towards the fruits and
Mhm.
vegetables. And you'll be like, wow, I didn't think I liked Brussels sprouts, but maybe I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And the mac and cheese with the broccoli is like the first thing I always suggest too. Like it's nutrition by addition. And I think we're so used to being like, well, cut this out and cut that out and eat
Yeah.
less of this, that it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you could, use to eat more fruits and vegetables, but it doesn't mean we have to like replace. We can add,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, and like to what we're already doing. If maybe like, oh, when you make tacos, like make some beans with it, or like you said, put the stuff on the pizza. Like it doesn't
Ramen.
have to ramen. Yes.
Ramen
Okay.
is a great add-in.
I think it's super underrated to make
Yes.
like ramen with and add like veggies into it or a protein, like make it more of a
Good.
meal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's super underrated. I think being able to just add in, it doesn't have to be like a side of veggies and our meat and our carb, like all separate. Like mixed dishes are still healthy. I don't know where like we got this idea that like if it's all mixed together or it tastes really good, like now it's not healthy. Like I had a client recently, we were talking about like she has a few kids and some of the issue is right like trying to make meals that everyone likes and that getting her kids to eat more fruits and vegetables slowly like for ones that are a little picky or have some kind of sensory stuff going on and I said if there's raviolis with spinach in the middle like that counts
Mm-hmm.
like that there's nutrients there. Like, is that a whole serving of spinach? Maybe not, but it's something, right? Like if we're comparing it to just, no veggie, right? Just like plain ravioli, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But like if we're trying to get in those little things because you have kiddos that, aren't going to sit down and eat a bowl of broccoli,
Mm-hmm.
then like, yeah, that's how we can do that. Add it to the mac and cheese, mix it up so it's covered in that sauce or dipping in a branch, like adding a sauce or the dip or whatever, like it doesn't negate the nutrients. Like I feel like we have this idea that like one negates the other. Like if I'm not eating it, if I add the ranch, then like I don't get the nutrients from the broccoli. It's not as quote unquote good. That's not true. Like it probably just tastes better. Like I don't know about you, but plain broccoli is kind of like it's a weird texture. It's a little dry. Like that's not really enjoyable, at least for me. Like, and also certain vitamins and minerals like need that fat to be absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why actually dressing on a salad is so important because that helps the whole process. Like, I think we've just come to this point where we're so divided on like eating perfectly, eating the quote unquote right way. And we've negated like enjoyment of food and just like it doesn't have to be so complicated or uncomfortable or hard. And it can be like easier and enjoyable and eating what you actually like instead of what the internet is like, this is the superfood of the week.
Of the week.
Like, or the day. Like, honestly, I lose track, but it's like, I think one recently, like, oh my God, I can't think of like I know like acai bowls were like really popular and I like acai, but also like I'm not making that at home. Like that's like a whole ordeal. So like it's fine. You don't need to go buy a powder to add it into your whatever. Like just eat the vegetables that you like. Like if you don't like Brussels sprouts, don't eat Brussels sprouts. But like if you like them, then that's great. Like if you don't like I feel like cauliflower is like a big thing right now and cottage cheese. I know it's not a vegetable, but just like a food that people are talking about on social media. Like it's like, okay, well, if you don't like cottage cheese, like it's okay. Like, it's fine. It's not a big deal, you know?
Yeah, you have to figure out what works for you and
Hmm.
don't give up on a certain food if you try it even a couple of times and you're like, eh. 'Cause
Yeah.
I always put the luckily my husband's a great cook and so about 2 times a week he'll be home for to cook dinner and
Hmm.
we always have these like big like proteins and all the individual side items. And again, when you
Hmm.
mentioned it earlier, we think that having a protein and a couple of side items and then your carb for ADHD people, that's a nightmare. That's so now I can't, that's not only one meal, that's 4 meals. That's 4 different meals that I'm having to cook at one time to make one
Right.
meal. You're crazy, but not a big deal to him. And uh just to get introduced with stuff and everything, I make my children, you have to have at least a bite of everything that we made on your plate. Now, does that mean I'm gonna stand over you and make you eat it? No. It's on your plate though, because if it's not on your plate, you're sure not gonna eat it. And if you don't like it like this, well, we cooked it different this time. Try it like
Hmm.
this. Well, we cooked it different this time. Try it again. And then we
Hmm.
teach them that how our taste buds change. And because they do, they change
Yeah.
from when you're a kid to when you're a teenager to when you're an adult. And,
Hmm.
even with stuff like pregnancy makes your taste buds change. So, like with each pregnancy I had, my whole palate changed and things that I
Hmm.
loved, I couldn't even stand the texture or taste of anymore, and
Hmm.
vice versa. So even if you've grown your whole life, like my husband was really bad for the longest time, he'd be like, no, I don't like broccoli. Well, when's the last time you tried it? Well, I don't know. I was like 12. Dude,
Right.
in
Yeah.
your 30s now. Maybe give it another chance. We get so
Yeah.
stuck.
We get so stuck. And I think especially like Brussels sprouts you mentioned earlier is one of those things. It's like people are like, oh, I hate Brussels sprouts. They're so smelly. And I'm like, well, how did your mom or dad or whoever cooked for you cook Brussels sprouts? Well, they boiled them and they were stinky. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's gross. Like, right? Or in my opinion. So, but I was like, have you tried them roasted where they're like almost charred? Like, that's my favorite way to eat
Yeah.
them. It's kind of like one of those things, like a lot of times people's version of vegetables is like a steamed bag of vegetables,
Uh-huh. With no
which
seasoning,
no seasoning,
no
and which
cheese.
is if right, if you dig that, then that's fine. But like
If you don't,
I
there's
wouldn't
nothing wrong with you. Like you're not,
right, there's nothing
they're still
wrong with
doing
you.
good
You
health
want a
for
little
you.
flavor, like, and you don't want them all mushy, like, you know?
Brussels sprouts in specific too are so versatile. You can drench them in
Mm-hmm.
honey and cinnamon and they're delicious. And you can also
Mm-hmm.
put them like put garlic and cheese. There's so many different ways you can eat Brussels sprouts,
Mm-hmm.
just in
Yeah.
specific. But I also heard that the Brussels sprouts we have now are not the same Brussels sprouts that our parents and grandparents had, that they've been so
Oh.
genetically modified as everything has these days that they don't taste near as bad as they did back in the day.
Oh, okay. So maybe like they were stinkier at one point.
You're
But
not wrong.
yeah, like I think just like you said, being open to trying it again. And I think they say for kids, like when you're introducing foods, like you have to try something like 7 times
Mhm,
before you can really definitely be like, I don't like it. And I
mhm.
don't know if that's more like because it's, like you said, it tastes so different, cooked different ways, or just because over time, like we change, our taste buds change, and especially as young kids, like that's happening so rapidly.
Yes.
And it really like you can't just make that determination like, oh, you had one bite and you're like, nope, like I'm never eating that again my entire life.
Another thing that I use for all of this is to treat it like medicine.
Mm.
We're so, what's the word? Culturalized, socialized,
Hmm.
programmed to think that everything has to taste good all the time. And like, is it important for your food to taste good? Absolutely. But also, it's not a it shouldn't be a make it or break it type of thing.
Mm,
For example, when I try to give my kids medicine, there's only like this one type of medicine that they like. And but that type of medicine is only good for this type of sickness. So if you have that
right.
type of sickness, I'm sorry, this is the only medicine for it. And they were like, I don't like this. Well, I mean, it's not supposed to be for your enjoyment. It's supposed to be for your health, to make you better. And food is medicine in the same sense. So even if I don't like something, I can generally make, like, it's very rare I find something that I cannot make myself eat. Um,
Mm,
because I have this mindset of, well, I don't have to eat like a whole helping of it, but I bet the specific vitamins and nutrients in this particular actual vegetable
mhm.
um is something that my body would appreciate in some form or
Yeah,
fashion. So just to kind of make sure I don't have any nutritional deficiencies,
totally.
it's okay if I force myself to eat 2 or 3 bites of this right here.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think also like understanding like 2 or 3 bites is better than none.
Hmm.
Like if that's all you can handle. And something I like to remind people too is like, because some people are very like, I really enjoy fruit or I really enjoy vegetables, and kind of depending on if they like that sweeter or more savory taste. And you can get most of the nutrients you need from one or the other is both great, absolutely. Like that's the ideal situation. But sometimes for that texture, that taste, like you mentioned, can be really difficult. And so sometimes that means like, okay, we can get vitamin C from both vegetables and fruit. We can get, potassium from vegetables and fruit, and kind of identifying those foods. And so maybe if like one version, you're like, I really hate this. And like you said, like getting a few bites in, that's awesome. And like, can we get it from a different source that maybe you can eat a little more of? And just like, it doesn't have to be like, I honestly, other than banana bread, I don't like bananas. It's a texture thing. I don't like the stringies. Like, I don't like bananas. So, like, for me, like, I'm just like, I feel like growing up it was like, oh, you're not gonna get enough potassium.
Mhm.
Like bananas aren't the only food that have potassium, right? Like we can make sure we're filling those gaps in other places. And yeah, sometimes it comes down to like, okay, maybe I need to eat a few bites of something that I like is not my favorite. It happens, right? That is like a reality. And like I love that like food is so versatile. When we learn more about it, we can really fill those gaps in ways that you'll probably enjoy if you like, most fruits and vegetables. And like it doesn't have to be so like cut and dry, like this is the only food, or you're not eating this food, you're going to be deficient type of thing, you know?
Absolutely. Smoothies are really versatile.
Oh my God,
When
yes.
you're talking about the acai bowls earlier, my mouth's watering. That's acai bowls are one of the things that I can eat really well and process really well.
Hmm.
And my body does really well on because a lot of stuff, as soon as I eat, I crash. I can go, go, go,
Mm.
go, go with energy, and as soon as I eat anything, I'm ready for a nap. But acai bowls don't do that to me. And
Mm.
they come in little, because they did, you can get the powder and then you have to like mix it together. And you're right, that is way more complicated than any of us want to be.
Hmm.
But in the frozen section now, they have these little
Yes.
smoothie packets. So they're just little single serve smoothie packets, and they come in a
Uh-huh.
whole bag of them. So you get like 10
Hmm.
plus of these little acai smoothie packets. And you just throw that in the blender, and then any kind of other fruits and vegetables that you want to go in
Hmm.
there, and add a little juice. And then I eat mine with a scoop of peanut butter for
Mm.
protein, and that's just
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. Another convenience meal I like is peanut butter and yogurt. And you can get all
Hmm.
sorts of yogurt now that's high in protein. And
Yep.
I have to focus a lot on protein because I have the hypoglycemia problems. So my
Hmm.
body thinks it needs like 120 grams of protein a day or it starts to whine. And
Yeah.
you just take a spoonful of peanut and to so You can get little peanut butter cups that are single serve
Yep.
peanut butter cups. I go to Sam's Club and buy a whole case of those at a time.
Mhm.
Now, peanut butter with my yogurt and peanut butter with my fruit and make whole meals out of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think you mentioned the protein, and yeah, protein helps our like body absorb the carbohydrates slower, just like you said, to give that more even energy. And so does fat. And I think with yogurt specifically, something that I started doing, whole milk yogurt is completely not talked about enough. I think whole milk yogurt is the best. And that's just like some people may disagree, that's fine. But for me, it, like you said, helps me. It adds a little more to the yogurt on top of whatever else I'm having it with to keep me fuller longer. So it's a little, has a little extra calories, a little extra fat. And I think the texture is really great. Like whole milk Greek yogurt just has a smoother texture. It's not so tart, unless you like really like that about it. But I think that's just one of those things, like we can add fat and protein to those meals, like you said, to help us feel full. And I think fat is one of those things that gets this like bad rep, but like it's really important for us, especially for women, like with just reproductive health and hormones. And it is for men too, but women especially, like fat is so, so important.
And there was such a campaign against it for so long.
Mhm.
Everything for like 25 plus, it's still you walk through the yogurt
Mhm.
aisle especially, and it's like fat free, fat free, fat free.
Yes.
And what people don't realize is that I'm really big into languages, and
Mhm.
I only speak like a couple, so I'm only taking this for face value of what I've been told.
Mhm.
But our language is the only one where fat in your food is the same word as fat on your body. So people
Mm.
see that and they automatically think that the fat in your food translates to fat on your body and it's going to stick when it's not true. There's several
Yeah.
different types of fat. There's saturated and unsaturated, and that's what you need to the trans, and you have to pay attention to what kind of fat that you're getting because you're absolutely right. We need more of it for processes that our body needs to do.
Mhm. Yeah. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. And yeah, that's very interesting. I think you're right. Like people do think that it's like, oh, if I eat fat, yeah, it's just like automatically stored on my body. Um, when in reality, right, that's not how that works. And it's so important for so many processes. And you mentioned the yogurt, like it's saying fat free, low fat. I think one of the most frustrating things I found for a while was trying to like I like to buy the tub of yogurt, but like I also like the variety of flavors. So occasionally like I do like, getting the single serve cups of yogurt. But Trader Joe's is the only place I can find yogurt in the cup that is whole milk. Like I have looked at every other grocery store, Publix. I'm in North Carolina, so like Publix, Ingles, Food Lion, everywhere, Harris Teeter, and it's only like fat free or low fat. And I'm like, I just want whole milk yogurt. And you have to buy the giant tub. And it's like sometimes I just want two yogurt cups for the week. I don't want a whole tub of yogurt.
Hmm.
But, because for some reason that's like not available or it's available in plain only,
Hmm.
that a lot of people don't even realize like whole milk yogurt is a thing, because I certainly didn't really think about it because it's like low fat or fat free, and like you don't really think much beyond that from what's available in the store.
Yeah, and the more you learn, you'll find that it's actually really hard to find the things that you're looking for in the store
Mhm.
more often
Oh
than
yeah.
it's so hard to I've had to navigate it with being allergic to soy. That
Mm.
was a hard navigation because everything has it.
Mhm.
So you get down there and you're like, okay, and that's the problem with diet culture. They're like, okay, so cut out this, cut out that, cut out that. And the thing I hear the most is, okay, well, what can I eat? Because when I talk about my
Mhm.
soy allergy, that's always the first thing people say, like, well, what can you eat?
Yeah.
And it was hard to navigate in the beginning. And
Mhm.
as anything is, it's gonna be a learning curve, but you start to figure out the patterns and what works for
Mhm.
you and the more you explore. And I really recommend keeping a food journal because, again, the hardest part of most things is remembering. So
Mhm.
writing it down helps you keep track of this and that. And for the longest time, I'd be like, my food journal's so in depth that it had all the restaurants that I went to and what I could eat at the restaurants. So I
Mhm.
knew exactly what my options are when I went where. And then
Mhm.
I knew that I could get this yogurt at this store and that this store didn't have that yogurt, but it did have this and that one doesn't have this. So, and again, I hated to store hop. I couldn't stand a store hop. I,
Mhm.
like, go over here for a couple of things and then go over there
Oh,
for a
no.
couple of things. That drove me crazy. But now that I've been doing it for years, not store hopping. That's not I don't store hop. I can't stand to do that. But I've learned that, okay, well, this week I was able to make it to Publix, so
Right.
this is what I get at Publix, and then which I
Mhm.
let Publix tell me what to eat. I just go in there and, whatever's on sale that I can have is what I'll
Right.
get, and a lot of times, like, the Olive Bar stuff,
Oh, yeah.
which is pricey, yes, but I'm learning that most of what's on the pricey Olive Bar comes in jars over next to the pickles.
Mhm.
So you go over there and you can just kinda navigate and look and see what they have, and, yeah, whatever's on sale is what I
I
do.
dig that. I yeah. I mean, that's a lot of why, like, I think grocery shopping can feel so difficult because it can be we're like the only country that has so many options. Like, you go into one aisle and there's like 500 mac and cheeses.
Mhm,
Um, like, that isn't really a reality anywhere else but here. But it's overwhelming, but it also the psychology behind grocery store food placement is insane
yeah,
if you, like, go down that rabbit hole of, like and even beyond, like, price of, like, oh, expensive things, mid-range to expensive is eye level, and the cheap stuff is, kind of on the floor,
mhm,
so that you don't really, quote, unquote, "see it." But even just, like, the things that are on sale and the placement of things and how, like, the price for a company to put something somewhere is more expensive if it's in a more desirable area and this and that, and it's just insane, and I don't really like to hop on, like, the narrative of, like, "Oh, big food and all this stuff," because like, I think it's not that it's not true, but just it can be very overwhelming, like you said, and it's like a rabbit hole I don't need to go down to make my food choices. But there is something about like the psychology of the grocery store and of eating and similar to social media, like, oh, don't like eat this or that. And it's being able to be like, what do I like?
mhm,
Like, I've worked with so many clients that maybe they have a binge food that is ice cream or something basically that society has deemed bad, unhealthy, right? And once they've healed the relationship with food, they're like, I don't even really like Oreos that much. They're like, they're good, but they're not like my favorite dessert by far. But because we put on this emphasis on these foods or certain things, it like really affects us in a way that is kind of unclear until you sit down and unpack it.
mhm,
And it's just it's just crazy because it's unlike anything else. Like when you have maybe a poor relationship with alcohol or drugs or all these things, right? We can be abstinent from those behaviors, but we have to eat.
mhm,
So like we just end up in this kind of bad relationship with food because, well, I have to eat something. I can't just not eat at all. But
mhm,
we have all these views and perceptions of things that are affecting how we feel when we eat, what we're choosing to eat, how much we're eating or not eating,
mhm.
you know?
Yeah, you land in a limbo for sure and don't know which way to go.
Mhm.
Food is so complex not only
Mhm.
in the external complexities
Mhm.
of the propaganda and manipulation that they're totally doing for us, but as emotional.
Mhm.
Like, comfort food being Oreos, for example. And so anytime they're any kind of not whatever, then they turn to Oreos. And you start unpacking that, and turns out they never actually even liked Oreos. It's just the only time they felt connected to their mom was over Oreos. So they
Mhm.
stuck with it and have just
Yeah.
been perpetuating that pattern in a hopes of feeling comfort and it's a
Mhm.
sense of false comfort that's
Right.
self-sabotaging, and but you don't realize any of that until you start
Mm-mm.
trying to unpack it. And which is again why I recommend a food journal, to not only track what you're eating and how it makes you feel, but to question yourself. Like, if you notice that you've been eating Oreos a lot and it's bothering you that you are, or you
Mm.
feel like it's a
Right.
problem, sit down with that and try to dissect it. Just write on the piece of paper,
Mhm.
why is this bothering me? And just start rambling through writing to yourself. People get hung up on journaling because they're like, oh, I'm not a good writer, or I'm not a good speller, or whatever, whatever.
Mm.
It doesn't have to make a bit of sense. You can just start putting words
Yep.
down that, as long as it makes sense to you, and it's helping you navigate your thoughts and emotions and backtrack them all the way to what's causing this or that. And is
Mhm.
it true? Is it helpful? Because that's something that
Mhm.
I cover a lot, is it doesn't really matter if it's true or not.
Mm.
The question is it helpful or not?
Right.
Is this belief serving you, or is it
Mhm.
harming you? We could we could go on for another hour.
Yeah, I think it's honestly crazy, and I think just to kind of bring it full circle, like, yeah, a lot of times those habits are because we don't have other coping skills, or like you said, we're trying to connect to something that we don't realize, and we turn to food because it's quote unquote safe. It's not going to harm us, but it
Mm,
can still be a form of self, it's not going to harm us in the sense of like overdosing on drugs or drinking, too much. And so like we turn to that in a quote unquote safe way, but it can still be
mhm.
self-harming with that intention.
Yeah, food is super intimate. It's intertwined in
Mhm.
everything that we are as people, because you are what you eat, right? And that doesn't only mean like, it's so deep. It's so deep
It's
just
so
from
deep.
energetic standpoint. If it doesn't matter what you're trying to heal, it doesn't matter if you're trying to heal a physical ailment, or if you're
Mhm.
trying to heal a trauma that happened
Mhm.
when you were a kid. Food is a great way to gain control over that and start
Mhm.
throwing the momentum in a direction that you want. Because if you start figuring out what's good, what works for your body specifically.
Mhm.
Ignore what everybody else says works for them. That's great for them. I'm glad they're
Yep.
working on that. It has nothing to do with you. You can take their suggestions and experiment with them, but do not ever
Mhm.
take anything for face value until you've tried it out and talked to your body and how it makes you feel.
Exactly.
But once you start figuring that out, you cultivate that relationship with yourself, on a mental, physical, spiritual, holistic plane of existence. And it brings a sense of uh, improved self-esteem and comfort with
Mhm.
yourself. And you become proud of yourself because you made a good choice today. And,
Mhm.
that's, do not beat yourself up over choices that you would label as poor. There are no
Mhm.
poor choices and good choices. Everything's just choices. And beating yourself up over things that aren't perfect is not helpful. Just be
Mhm.
aware of it. And since you're aware of it, you're like, well, oops. Okay, and a little forethought, on my
Yeah.
next decision. How am I gonna, I'll make a good decision this evening. What's my next
Mhm.
opportunity to make a good decision? Let me go ahead and start planning it out in my head so that I can be proud of myself for making that good decision. and it starts healing your relationship with yourself, and it starts in healing the relationship with yourself heals the relationships you have with everybody else, and it just
Mhm.
echoes out from there.
Absolutely.
All right, so this was wonderful. Like I said, I could keep on and keep on, but we'll spare people. We can always do another episode if you ever wanted to come back on the show. I'd be happy to have you.
Absolutely.
Would you like to tell people how they can find you?
Yeah, of course. So I hang out on Instagram at Sammy SAMMI dot nutrition. And then on my website, I have a lot of free resources as well as if you want to work one-on-one with a dietitian, and that is sammybnutrition.com.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that all of that's linked really close by so nobody has to look too hard. Because again,
Awesome.
convenience is key, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here.